something really different here, which is what I know to be the truth of what a lot of these situations are. We're going to mix a little bit of technology and magic. Why are we going to do this? Because this is exactly what crime groups are doing to assure their victory. They are taking their roots in faith and positioning them with practical means of, I guess you could say, application, right, in order for the extraction to take place. A lot of people would look at me like a lunatic for introducing this as what it is to the audience that I'm presenting it to, but a lot of you are skeptical about things that are the truth. And if I'm going to be the one to deliver it to you, I will be the one to deliver you the truth. So, what we have in a lot of cases with crime families is the tie, the blood bond, the whatever they did to bind themselves to a group, an image, a thought, an idea, a concept. And then we have the talents and skill sets that are adopted, used, or applied in order to exert pressure, in order to maintain status, control, and presence. A lot of what people don't understand about why people destiny swap in the first place is that this is about presence. This is about maintenance. This is about keeping order where order was not organic, where order was not actually of God. A lot of these deluded people, and I really had to hold my tongue on the description here, a lot of these deluded people are actually considering themselves to be Knights of Templarship. They're considering themselves to be like organically chosen by God to do certain things. But what they had to do to make connection with God was slice their hand open and draw blood and pledge blood as if it was their life force getting entrapped that would give them the grace of God. I have never heard of a valid faith that has ever required this of somebody. And while a lot of people say that swearing by oath and swearing upon your blood and your legacy and whatever is the truth of what it means to make like a soul sacrifice on behalf of the good of the world, you're already engaging in battle if you're chosen by God from the moment you realize that you're different from people. You're already shedding blood. It's not literal blood, but you're shedding the blood of your lineage, your legacy, your sweat, your tears, everything. What people don't realize is that true angelhood and true service to God comes through tears, not through blood. Why would Father God be asking you in the first place, on a spiritual level, why would God be asking you to shed your blood for a covenant He already mitigated blood for? He said, no more blood sacrifices. My child Jesus is going to come to you and fix everything. No more violence, no more bloodshed. Let me handle the vengeance. I'll get my blood that way. My son is coming through. And that's where Jesus comes from. That said, these fake Knights of Templarship God, after they drew blood and did a weird ritual and all this other bullshit that is not even necessary, they believe that that's theirs. They believe that all of that stuff is what pledged them into a grace by God. No. So now you have people believing this lie. Someone will come to them in a circle of trust and say, oh, this person's a problem. This person's a problem. We require this for the cult. What are we going to do? Oh, well, I know. I will pledge this person because they were this anyway. They were this anyway, and they did this anyway, and they're not of God, and I have reason to believe, like God told me, God came down to me and wrote it in the sand, and blah blah blah. Like they'll tell you some crackpot story about why this person doesn't deserve to live, and everyone will just nod and go, wow, that's really intriguing. That's really interesting. So we shouldn't forgive them for their sins, like God said. No, we should do what the cult says and just kill them. That's what the problem is here. That's what you're dealing with here. You're dealing with a bunch of murderers who don't have an outlet. They don't paint. They don't do anything. They don't structure their lives. They do things for large amounts of money and think that that is the way to live because they think it helps them live large. Meanwhile, God sees them as paupers and refuses to bless them otherwise, which is why in between those big paychecks, which I bet they never even had one if they were lucky without the help of 17 other people, they don't have shit. They're scared about how they're going to have more. They're scared. This is not the blessing of God. God doesn't leave you in fear of what it is you're going to have. God doesn't leave you in fear of what it is your talents, your gifts, and your applications of these things are if you were really serving Him, right? So, here's the thing. These cults have hired hackers who hack the targets and debilitate them, cripple them informationally, steal their passwords, steal access to their own things, clone their phones, their SIM cards, clone their applications and their software so that there's always a copy of what this person is doing to be seen on someone else's screen. There is usually something you can target to see this. If you are looking at an encrypted messenger that starts skipping and jumping several times as you're texting someone, those are copies of that login being distributed through a shell to other people's screens. You are advised to promptly factory reset your phone or alternatively delete any and all, because this is my method, delete any and all sensitive info off of that phone, and I hope it's a burner phone because this is exactly why you would be doing that in this case. You would delete all of that information that is personal to you, and you would be using it for observation purposes, almost like a sandbox, okay? This is exactly how I gathered and got so much intel, because it wasn't just gathering and sifting, it was literally collecting and seeing it in real time, what was happening to the software that I myself was supposed to be using to keep myself safe. So someone found a way to outsource private encrypted data to other people so that these texts, these conversations, and these attachments of other people's machines to their stuff could then be provided to people who are continuing to stalk them and hunt them down. This is usually the first stage of it. The second stage of it is the interruption of their work. If they are trying to reach in any way out to other people, to tell their story, to explain what was done to them, to contact people about potential stalking issues, to tell other people, hey, I need privacy to tell you this, but I think my house has been bugged with a bunch of cameras, and how would they know that? Well, in my case, I painted my walls myself, and I knew the walls by heart. I saw every grain, every hole, everything in the house. And when I looked again, there were holes just the size of needles or pins or nails or something like that was small enough but also large enough to inject a very tiny spy cam into the wall. Just enough. It was like maybe the head of a wood nail, right? Not even large enough to be a screw. So this is what I was looking at. I was looking at pinholes that were sent probably into the wall to feed a camera down into the wall. And could I fish it out? No, because I didn't know how to. I stuck things into the wall to block access. And this is when the stalking outside of my door got very bad. So then you had confirmations, right? What you're going to understand is that the stages of these attacks are set specifically to monitor everyone in the privacy of their own home without detection. So once that detection is blocked, or rather once that monitoring ability is blocked and then detection starts happening of the threats and all, that's when the stalkers really start losing their minds, because they're like, how did they escape are discussing this, we're also going to discuss the phase where, as this is going on in a person's own private domicile and private asset effects, there are people being sent out to slander this person. Oh, did you know they were this? Did you know they're in this relationship? Meanwhile, this person is completely oblivious. What relationship? Relationships are literally being forged on their behalf without their consent, but this isn't considered to be tampering, stalking, or abuse. That's very interesting, right? So this is the third stage of the attack. You have relationships that don't exist being forged on their behalf by the word literally of their operants, their enemies. Opposition, not operants. They're trying to act like operants, but they're opposition. So, the next stages of these attacks all come into play through physical and emotional violence. It follows the tasks down the steps every single time, down the line, straight through. It's almost like if this were a compliance document, this is exactly what you would be looking for. After they can't get control of the person's whereabouts, they start physically stalking them or sending people who would be hired on for zero money, or even like a pittance, like $30, so that a person who's like addicted to drugs could get their fix and be like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. I'll do this for grocery money. I'll do this for blah. Like, you have to wonder if this was actually anything led by God, whether it's a Gestapo or some bullshit like this, whatever you want to call it, right? Why would they be desperate for money for groceries? They think that cooperating with the devil is gonna pay for their way. They're gonna get everything fed their way, just for them to end up in prison if they get caught. That's not really God. I don't know God to have ever done that. Okay, so I just want to put it here, right? It transpires that once the stalking and emotional abuse becomes elevated, this is where the stalkers are really like losing their shit. They're losing their minds because the hacking didn't work. The destruction of property digitally didn't work. The monitoring against all will and testament and consent did not work. And then on top of that, they're being seen for what they're doing and they're so afraid of getting caught. They're actually terrified at this point, probably, of getting caught, to the extent of hiring external parties to the situation to feed this same crack to assure that this person cannot escape the grasp of what it is they're trying to do to them before they can secure their hands on what? Their finances, things they don't know about, possible wills and testaments, things that they were given by other people, opportunities that belong to them. Look, people looking for them. Something as small as that. People asking about them and wondering what their position in life is in order to elevate them. People hate that God protects these people. Simple and plain. Very concise. And I like that, right? I like concise, simple things. Either these people are upset that they can't have it, or they're upset that everything is written against them no matter what they do. They chose the cult, confirmation with that noise, they chose the cult over an actual God-given opportunity. And so, after all of the technology abuse is applied and fails, it starts to get really nasty. People start snaking bank account numbers. They start snaking information that has to do with personal identifiable information, security codes and passwords, cloning text messages to appear as someone else, sending other people to show up as the person that they're attacking in courts, in banks, in civil institutions, in government institutions, in federal institutions. They start falsifying reports to make sure this person is followed around by people who will stalk them legally. They will corroborate and collaborate with the police on stories that never fucking happened, such as said relationships, where people will generate AI images to fabricate entire images, stories, and items otherwise debatable in a judge's courtroom to solidify their story. But on face value, it is presented to people who go along with the story in order to assure that either their job is easier or that they get paid under the table. Simple facts. This goes on online harassment, this goes on in-person harassment, any facet of abuse power as they can to assure that it isn't seen that way. And belief is very powerful here, which is why, whether or not you are religious or spiritual or attuned with any level of spirituality, you must understand that a person's belief in your impact, your story, or your presentation makes or breaks what happens for you. And of course, this is why Satan was condemned for being deceptive through lying, or breaking contracts that were presented as truth and authenticity to those who fell for it. This is why Satan is condemned, because he lied to God. He lied to God about what he promised God he would do on behalf of the angels that he worked with. He lied about what he was willing to do to protect God's blessings and to assure that people kept working and exerting themselves in order to have them. God doesn't want us to suffer. He wants us to have appropriate training to elevate ourselves into true merit. He wants to test us. He puts us through endurance tests. He does not want us to suffer. True suffering is having all of those gifts, all of those blessings, and not having the discernment to wave them properly. That is what the problem is. So when a bunch of people have all these things coming to them and they don't know what to do with them, guess what? They're poorly distributed. No one gets the help that they need. No one actually follows suit with the legacy of any worth or value. And then on top of this, you have people who are disseminating information that's completely false about the belief of why God is and what he does and why he is so great. You have people who are tricked very eloquently into using very high-level skill sets such as computing and technology, banking and asset holding, distribution of not only finances but food, of shelter, of all these things, being manipulated into a mindset that does not follow the couriership of God. So this is why you have greed. This is why you have hoarding. This is why you have people who are so terrified to lose their wealth that they're willing to do anything to protect it, as if it was never theirs to begin with. This is the problem. This is the poor judgment that is affecting things. This is the poor judgment that is allowing a skill set like hacking to become a crime, when actually some people can use it to defend themselves transversely and transitively against the people who are doing this to them. This is abuse, and this is the problem. It's not the tools, it's the mind behind those tools being used. So I want to leave you all with that today, because this was a very important lecture in discernment, in the truth of why things are the way that they are, in the truth of why there is such an uproar about why certain people have certain things, why certain people are attacked, why